the brown bear, the black bear, and the polar bear, they're very closely related, and that's why they go under the same genus. So that's what a genus is. It's a group of very similarly related species. Any questions about genus? No? Okay, good. So the species. When you're naming a species, normally what you want to do is pick a name that's characteristic or unique to that organism. So for example, the reason that they chose maritimus for the polar bear is because polar bears spend most of their lives at sea, not like swimming around at sea, which they do swim around a lot, but they spend their lives at sea on the ice chunks and stuff. They don't spend very much time on solid dry land. All right, any questions? All right, so listen. Just so we understand, there's a little bit of a difference between systematics and evolutionary classification. The way we've organized so far for this section is you organize living things based on their biological characteristics, right? Like their physiology or their body parts and their body functions. That's what we're doing now. Later, we'll classify them based on like how closely related we think they are to other organisms as far as evolution goes. Any questions about how we're organizing them now? All right. They're going to be very similar because they're both pretty accurate and effective. So if we group organisms based on their biology, right? Well, the reason they have similar biology is because they're closely related and they have, more than likely, they have a recent common ancestor. So both systems are again, they're both going to be effective and they're going to overlap a little bit. Any questions? All right, and then don't forget, you do need to know the 7 taxa that Linnaeus came up with. 7. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. There's 7 taxa or levels that Linnaeus came up with. One more time. It's kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. You should probably write that down. Yes? Say it again. How about I show you here in a second? All right? All right, so real quick, again, I mentioned this yesterday, the individual that first came up with a system to organize living things was Linnaeus, right? And it was a pretty good system. He's the one that came up with the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species, right? What he had was he only had 2 groups or 2 kingdoms. Does anybody remember what the 2 groups were? So according to him, all living things had to fall under one of the 2 groups.
Plants and animals.
Plants and animals. Very good, right? Now we have 6, right? We still have plants and animals, but we also have the 2 groups of bacteria, the archaeobacteria and the eubacteria, right? And then we have the protists and the fungi as well. Any questions? Next, here's an example. This one's for you. They're obviously starting from smallest to biggest. I prefer, because I understand it better, if we start with biggest to smallest. So we're starting off with kingdom Animalia, right? We're going to take the camel and we're going to classify it or organize it, right? So the bottom says kingdom Animalia. Please note, there are millions of species of animals. We don't have room to put all millions of species of animals here, so we just took a few sample animals. Do you see that here? A few sample animals? Yes. I gave you the definition of an animal earlier, so all of these organisms fit the animal kingdom. Now, you can take the animal kingdom and you can break it down into smaller groups. By the way, I would encourage you to note this. I think it's valuable information. The animal kingdom has 36 different phyla. And you might want to note that on the side. There's 36 phyla in the animal kingdom. Well, since we're talking about camels, the phylum that camels belong in is phylum Chordata, as in the chordates, as in these are animals that have spinal cords and backbones. And under phylum Chordata, there's several classes. Alrighty, the camel falls under class Mammalia because they have fur or hair. They give birth to live young. They nurse their young. That's like one of the most important features of a mammal is they produce milk and nurse their young. All right, and I think it got all in hair, fur. They give live birth and they nurse their young. Warm-blooded. All right. Any questions about class Mammalia? Okay. There's also like the bird group, the reptile group, the fish group, amphibian group. All right. And then finally, under class Mammalia, there's several orders. Again, several orders, but the camel falls under Artiodactyla. Under that order, we still include the giraffes, the llamas, and the one-hump camels and the two-hump camels. So we're at order Artiodactyla, and then finally the camelids or the family Camelidae. That still includes the llamas. They're adorable. And then two camels, right? And then you break it up into the genus Camelus. There's only 2 species, I believe, in the camel genus. And by the way, I think it's most two-hump camels are domesticated, and then the one-hump camels, they're critically endangered. I think there's very few of them left. So they're not doing too well. But anyhow, so those are the two genera of camels, and then finally, this camel that we're talking about is a two-hump camel, so it's Camelus bactrianus, whereas the one-hump camel would be the dromedary camel. Yes.
What do the snake and the human have in common?
They're animals. They both, if you look at the biological definition of an animal, they both fall under that definition. And I want you to notice, sea stars are here. We didn't put all the animals in here, but you could also add sea sponges and jellyfishes right under the animal kingdom. You wouldn't be able to put sea sponges and jellyfishes in the chordate phylum, but they're animals. Yes, Callie.
What are the words next to like genus, family, order?
Genus, these are the names of these taxa that the camel belongs to. So all camels, it doesn't matter what kind of camel it is, all camels belong to kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Artiodactyla, family Camelidae, genus Camelus, and then depending on what kind of camel it is, then you determine, well, is it a one-hump camel or a two-hump camel, because those are 2 different species of camel. Any questions? All right. Okay, now listen, remember I told you that when Linnaeus came up with his naming system, he only had 2 groups. All living things had to be a plant or an animal. Okay, and now because we've learned a lot more about organisms, right? We've learned more about organisms. Now we know, well, there's not just 2 groups, there's 6. There's Archaebacteria, Eubacteria, Protists, fungi, plants and animals. All right, listen. We may not make any more like drastic changes to the classification system, but we still occasionally make small changes every now and then because we learn more, all right? And now especially with DNA technology, it's very accurate. If you want to know how similar 2 species are to each other and you want to be really accurate, you can compare their DNA. That'll really tell you if they're related or not. The more similar the DNA is, the more closely related they are. The less similar, in other words, the more different the DNA is, then that means they might have had a common ancestor, but it was further back in history. Yes?
Where do camels come from?
I don't know, but that would be a really good thing to look up and like share with us. You know, and there have been some really good like questions earlier today. when you have really awesome questions like that and we don't have time to answer them in class, and a lot of times I don't have the answer, take one for the team and look it up, and then share it with the rest of us, all right? So, here's another example of us having to make changes, all right? If you take a look, use your common sense. Which of these two are the most closely related? Raise your hand, don't blurt out.
The barnacles and the limpet.
Right? Anybody in their right mind is going to say, well, obviously the barnacles and the limpets are much more closely related to each other than they are to the crab. Did you know that that is not true? The crabs are more closely related than we realized, right? And we know this, part of the reason we know this is because, well, because of the type of larva they have, right? And DNA too, you can test the DNA, all right? Again, we learn stuff all the time, so when we figured this out, we had to adjust the little classification diagrams. Any questions? Any questions? All right, hurry up and get your blanks down. We humans, researchers, scientists of all kinds, we don't define or determine what a species is. Nature already does that. If two organisms belong to the same species, they will be able to have babies, and those babies will be fertile, right? That's how species are defined naturally. The other taxa, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, and genus, those taxa, they are defined by us, right? Again, we've gotten pretty good and pretty accurate at it, all right, but because we don't know everything and we make new discoveries, sometimes we have to make small adjustments to it, all right? Any questions? Any questions?
No.
So again, just like we had to add more groups to Linnaeus's two-group system with just the plants and the animals, we still continue to make slight changes now. All right, and again, especially like if we discover a new species of especially insects are discovered like all the time. Well, then if a new species is discovered, you have to add it to the group and give it a name. All right, any questions? All right, and then here's the last bit. Fill in your blanks and I'll go over it. Or their biology is, right? And you determine if they're related that way or not. What we want to do is look at how similar they are evolution-wise as well. But they're both ways of organizing them are going to overlap, because listen, if you study the different groups of bears, their biology is going to be very similar, right? Their physiology will be similar. Well, of course it is, because they're related evolution-wise. They had a very recent common ancestor, so both systems work and both systems are effective.